All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Abra's Money Talks live AMA.
All right.
This is where you get to ask me anything you want about crypto, about Abra, about investing, where it's all going, and I'd be happy to take any and all questions. In addition to this week's talking points, we've got a great panel segment with a couple of great guests, and we've also got a very special guest to close out the show today. So let's get right into it. Start streaming your questions. You can post the questions on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We've also got an exciting upgrade to announce today. So today we're not only streaming the show on YouTube, but we're streaming it on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. So the show today is going to be seen by thousands upon thousands of people. And of course, you can watch the rebroadcast on YouTube right after the show. The link just stays the same. You just click on it and you get to watch the whole show. So a lot of interesting things happening today. I'm going to get into it in a second. Like I said, I'm already seeing people posting some questions. Getting a little bit of feedback here, so I'm going to turn down the gain a little, see if we can get rid of some of the static. So that should be a little bit better. Okay, so keep the questions coming, and I'm going to get into some talking points. So if you read the newsletter, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and we'll get into this more on the panel, is are we in the middle of some kind of altcoin, rebirth or alt season, as they say, right? So let's call this an altcoin spring. And for people who aren't clear, altcoins for me are people use this term altcoin all the time. What's an altcoin? So an altcoin is basically a reference to cryptocurrencies that aren't Bitcoin, right? So Ether, but particularly the smaller ones, right? And so Doge is the one that kind of gets the brunt of the jokes of our world. I'm not a huge fan of the altcoin phrase or moniker, because it really doesn't do justice to the technological advantages and advances that some of these pretty cool projects are developing. But look, I mean, early signs are that we seem to be thawing out this kind of long dormant altcoin market. And so I guess my question is, are we really at the beginning of a new altcoin season, right? At least 100 small cap altcoins as of midweek had gained well over 20% in the prior 7 days. And there's a few sites that track these if you're not aware. And of course, the Abra app. And by the way, the first thing you should be doing before the AMA is download the Abra app so you can follow along. So if you haven't, go to the App Store and download the Abra app now. But consider this, right? So as of I think midweek, Thursday or so, and Cardano was up something like, well, let's bring up the chart here, right? So we've got here's Cardano up 16% for the week, but if I come over to the peak for the week, well up, down a little bit. So it's given back some of the gains, but I would say it was probably up, right, like 30% at the peak for the week. So that's Cardano, right? So it just really interesting. I think that there's a lot of excitement, a little bit of hype coming up around its new Shelly upgrade, which includes its new staking system, which enables people to earn interest on their Cardano holdings. So now you've got Cardano, Tron, Neo, Dash, Tezos, Cosmos, and eventually, if they get it together, Ethereum, which are all now proof of stake based protocols, and there's a lot of excitement for that. So that's something that I've been talking a fair amount on the show if you've been paying attention, and something that we'll continue to talk about. Now, Doge, which, as I said, is kind of the brunt of lots of jokes. It's as of midweek, it was up a startling over actually 110%. Now, it's given back a lot of those gains. But let's see here on the Abra chart how we're doing. It's given up a lot of those gains, but it's still up according to Barhydt, over 60% in the last 7 days, right? So that's Doge, right? And so what's going on there? Well, some people actually attributed the Doge rise and even some of the gains in alts overall to a series of TikTok posts purporting to kids pumping the price of Doge, trying to get it up to $1, which would be a 20,000% increase even from where it's at now. So to me, this kind of sings a little bit of Robinhood if you've been paying attention to what's going on there, and that's something that we're going to talk about in a few minutes when we get into this with our panel. But Tezos, Augur, Algorand, they're all up big in the past week. Most have given back some of the gains. But even if you look at the major altcoins, Stellar up 24%. The often maligned Bitcoin SV, BSV is up over 20%. And the list goes on and on and on. So one of the most often quoted stats in the crypto world is this so-called Bitcoin dominance stat as it relates to Bitcoin versus altcoins. And this shows the percentage of the total crypto industry market cap that is Bitcoin versus everything else, effectively, right? And so the number as of when I wrote the article was at about 64%, and I think it's actually gone up just a little bit because alts gave back a little bit more of the gains, although Bitcoin's down a little bit as well. But this is a pretty bullish sign for altcoins, right? Now, I have no predictions about where altcoins are going. As I tell you all the time, do your own homework. This is a show where we talk about how Abra works, where it's all going. These are my opinions. Make your own investment decisions. But I think that if we see another couple of weeks, preferably a month, of continuation and follow through, where this could be a good buy opportunity with the current pullback, this could be a sign of a new bull market in altcoins. So I think the other interesting thing going on is what I referred to earlier as this Robinhood effect, right? I think this run-up could get a boost from this Robinhood effect to altcoins. So if stocks, right, it's insane what's happening in the stock market. Let me see if I can show you here. This is the okay. So what you should see here is the S&P. So you can see that it's flat for the last couple of weeks, but the run up from March through, let's say, early July was absolutely insane in the S&P 500. And even more insane, this is the NASDAQ. And I mean, this is just straight up and to the right. Now, this is, of course, as I mentioned in some of my earlier newsletters, this is a big hangover of the Fed basically just printing money and the psychological boost. The Fed doesn't buy stocks, but by printing so much money and providing liquidity to the system, it's giving a huge psychological boost to stocks. And so a lot of this is coming from what I call this Robinhood effect. So let me take a step back and just kind of follow me for a second and see what you think about this, right? So let's talk about online sports betting for a second. As I said, just humor me and kind of hear me out, right? So online sports betting is a huge business. The industry leader Bet365 is available in over 50 countries, including countries in Europe, the Americas, Asia. Now, the service is banned in the U.S., bizarrely with the exception of New Jersey, which allows sports betting. And sports betting is totally culturally acceptable in places like Europe, most of Europe, honestly, most countries in the world. And this company, Bet365, did over $3.5 billion in 2019 revenue. That's a staggering number. There is no major sport that Bet365 doesn't broker wages on, including, ironically, all of the major sports leagues in the U.S. Now, right now, there's very little sports to bet on. So that's interesting, right? So where am I going with this? Well, it turns out that we actually do have our own form of sports betting evolving very quickly in the U.S., and it's what I call this Robinhood effect. This Robinhood effect is apparently being driven by 20-somethings opening up trading accounts on Robinhood, making bets on all kinds of stocks while promoting and pumping their favorite stocks via Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, and any other online service providing an audience for these eager go-getters. Now, Robinhooders, again, were blamed not only for the Doge run-up that I talked about earlier, but also driving up the price of Hertz stock after the company literally filed for bankruptcy. Now, normally bankruptcy is basically a signal that the stock is going to zero because the debtors will own the company and there's nothing you can do about it. So a huge run-up in a stock that's gone into bankruptcy is something that you just don't see. Now, this effect has been personified in I don't know how many of you watch Barstool Sports. I have watched it. I'm not a huge sports fan. I love basketball, but I'm not a huge sports fan. But I have seen David Portnoy's show. Now, he's basically started transitioning, he says temporarily, his focus from sports to stocks during the COVID shutdown. And he has a massive army of followers buying stocks on Robinhood. And he was recently quoted on Fox Business as saying that my plan is that stocks always go up. Now, I'm not so sure that that's a plan, but you see where this is going. So what happens when his rule fails and stocks don't always go up? So this is where I think altcoins could actually get a very interesting boost. So when this music stops and stocks aren't going up, right, they've kind of leveled out even over the last couple of weeks, I believe that this army of Robinhood sports bettors is going to look for the next big thing. And I think it's quite possible that they find that next big thing in crypto altcoins. So if that happens, we could actually see a meteoric rise in altcoin prices that makes last week or even 2017 look tame in comparison. So, and the other thing is, it's very easy to short most stocks. It's almost impossible for the average investor to short altcoins or crypto in general, okay? A short bet is a bet that the price is going to go down. So since they can't do that, right, that means they can only make bets that the price is going to go up. So it's pretty clear to me that if this happens, right, this is not only is this going to be a boon for Abra, but it's going to be a boon for a lot of services that offer myriad services for altcoins and the adoption of altcoins in general. So as I said, please invest responsibly when it comes to crypto. No more than 10% of your savings, and make sure that whatever you're investing in our world in crypto, you're comfortable losing. All right. So before we get to our panel, again, download Abra, get the app going so that you can basically follow along with whatever we're doing. I've got my app open. Before we get to the panel, just a couple of quick questions that we're seeing here. For a beginning investor, what's the right budget? If I have 10K to invest in crypto now, where should I put it? So I actually, this is, again, my opinion, I think you should put most of your long-term crypto holdings that you're not actively trading in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is kind of the digital gold, and that's what it's really become. That's what I do. And then I keep a little bit of my crypto-focused holdings for buying other cryptocurrencies. For example, I've invested in Cardano. I'll put a little bit of play money in and out of Doge just to see what's happening in the market, but I generally won't hold those altcoins very long. I actually actively more trade the altcoins and hold Bitcoin, and I'm constantly coming in and out. How easy will it be to cash out XRP on the Abra wallet after the price spikes? Good question. So let's go here to the Abra app. So you see here my portfolio. And if let's just say, I don't think I have XRP right now, but I have some Cardano ADA. So if the price has spiked and I want to get out, all I do is press this exchange button. You see the exchange button at the bottom right corner of the screen, and I can immediately convert whatever cryptocurrency I have back to dollars. And my exposure is now 100% in US dollars for whatever I've converted back. And I keep the benefits of whatever price spike or winnings I may have generated by holding XRP for that time frame. So thank you for that question. Just get back into the app here. And let's see, let me take one more question, and then I want to get to the panel because they're waiting. So is staking possible in Abra? Great question. So staking refers to this proof of stake protocol that I mentioned earlier in regards to our Cardano and other protocols like Dash that use it. Abra doesn't offer staking yet, but stay tuned. So this is something that I can't say too much about. The team doesn't like it when I give it all away. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. Let's go to our panel now. So let's see. We've got some really interesting guests coming up. Let's see if we can get them on here. So, good morning, panel. How are you all doing?
Good morning.
Hi. So, this is working fantastic. We've got like a major tech upgrade going on at Abra and Money Talks, and so you all are the proverbial kind of guinea pigs for this, and I'm so excited that it appears to be working. Okay, so let me see. So we've got Jill Carlson. Good morning, Jill, partner at Slow Ventures, and Ian
Hey, good
Bellina.
morning.
Ian, it's Bellina, right?
Yes, correct.
Great,
Ian Molina.
and yeah, Bellina, and you are the founder and CEO at Token Metrics, right?
Yes, correct.
So it's great to have you both here, and I'm really excited about this. I don't know if you heard some of the opening comments. Jill, I heard you on I think it's Nathaniel's show where you were talking about Robinhood, and really resonated with me. It's funny because I was literally writing my talking points, and I'm writing this. I'm going, is she in the room? Is Jill in the room? Because I'm literally saying to myself, okay, we're basically getting this Barstool Sports effect going on in Robinhood, which hasn't really made its way to crypto yet. So before we get into crypto, what's your take on what's going on with Robinhood?
Yeah, I mean it's been a really interesting few months as someone who has for a very long time had an interest in markets and been sort of actively trading. And for most of that time period, I've been surrounded by people, family, friends who couldn't think that it couldn't possibly think that it was more boring
Right.
this sort of hobby or interest of mine. And then suddenly over the last few weeks, months, it's gone mainstream. And for me, I think one of the first things that caused me to notice this was the use of social media as it interacts with
Yep.
trading, where suddenly again, these friends and family members of mine who, previously had no interest in sort of financial markets were suddenly posting screenshots of their
Right.
Robinhood
Right. Right.
accounts
Right.
on Instagram,
It's
on
crazy.
Facebook, and sort of bragging about, their Tesla gains or whatever it is. For me, it actually reminded me a lot of what cryptocurrency went through in sort of 2017 timeframe of this sort of massive run up of both prices and also interest.
Yeah. Do you think though that there's something more fundamental happening, or is it like a flash in the pan kind of thing where the crypto run up went away, and Ian, I'd like to get your take on this as it relates to altcoins. But Jill, do you think that that this is a short term phenomenon and we're going to be on to the next thing soon?
I hope not, I have to say. And, I know that there's a lot of data and anecdotes out there about sort of how problematic this trend is. And I don't want to discount that. I think that there are aspects of it that are deeply problematic. But I also think that it's deeply problematic that 50% of household stocks are owned by 1% of Americans.
Right.
I also think it's deeply problematic that so much of sort of the culture around Wall Street and finance and trading and investing in stock ownership has been so exclusionary to such a huge swath of the population. So, to some extent, I do actually buy into Robinhood's whole thing around democratizing finance.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
There are sort of
Yeah.
problematic aspects of it that we
Yeah.
can dive into.
For sure.
And so my hope is certainly that it's persistent. And I think if you look at the macroeconomic dynamics as well, just given the sort of mass money printing that's going on, I think that people are asking questions for the first time about the value of the money in their bank accounts. And I think
Right.
that there are some fundamentals driving this, in addition to, of course, just the natural human psychology and behavior of it feeling good when the number goes up,
For
and the
sure.
kind of gambling
For
nature
sure.
of it as
So,
well.
Ian, what's it going to take for this awakening to make its way from bankrupt hurt stocks to more interesting altcoins?
In a way, I would say it's already kind of making that progression, right? Because we've seen it happen with Dogecoin, and I think we're going through a global transformation where there's mass interest in terms of investing with retail investors, because people are seeing how the central bank and governments have basically been printing money and essentially propping up equities markets. Because we've had one of the longest equity bull runs of over 12 years. And when people see that, then you add on social media,
Mm-hmm.
that people who are making money and those gains kind of begin to kind of tell their friends about it. Then you really have this medium and vehicle to really kind of promote and evangelize
Yeah.
investing. So I think that's what's really kind of taken up with Robinhood.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the same thing take effect with TikTok and Dogecoin.
So
Because
so
Dogecoin went, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so two questions, right? So this week, for example, we've seen a huge spike in Cardano interest, ADA in Abra, right? It's just, I mean, huge relative to other coins, and I think a lot of that the upgrade. But when you say it's already happening, how do you track that in a way that leads you to feel comfortable making that statement?
I would say so with token metrics, we basically specialize in altcoins. So
Okay.
in the last few months, we've seen an uptrend in just interest with customers, with our audience, with our content. Lots of people are joining crypto and telling us they got into crypto this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our audience is very diverse in terms of people who've been in crypto since 2012 to some people who joined crypto 3 months ago, and mainly through social media. So I would say
Yep.
probably two-thirds of our audience comes through YouTube, through Twitter, through blogs, and it's not so much word of mouth. It's just so much people going online, typing in a coin's name or Bitcoin or altcoin, and
Yep.
then having that interest to then really kind of want to trade or invest in that.
Right. Now, I can tell you from Abra's experience, 99% of the people who come into crypto are coming in because somebody has explained Bitcoin to them, or they've read about it, or they've seen one of us online, or how do they, in your world, and I'd love to hear, Jill, I'd love to hear your take on this. How do they go from knowing Bitcoin to knowing about these other currencies as well? I mean, do you have any insights as to that on your site?
Yes. So as mentioned, most of our audience comes in via YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and typically they follow somebody they like, either us or some other influencer. They watch their content, they learn about Bitcoin through their news updates, through their analysis, and after having some confidence, then they want to invest and trade in crypto and
Right.
Bitcoin.
Right.
And really, I would say the main method has been mainly through education.
Yep.
So education is really kind of the onboarding wrap to getting people into crypto. And right now, the best medium for that is video.
Yep. Yep. So Jill, I think I remember you saying you're a fan of Barstool Sports, right? And
Grew up in Boston. What can I
you
say?
grew up in Boston. Okay. I actually had seen it a couple of times. I kind of discounted it. Wow. I mean, it's like, all of a sudden we've got like this entertainment, like not, I would say Jim Cramer's entertainment for middle-aged guys like me. Whereas, David Portney is like entertainment for everyone else, particularly millennials. I mean, do you find that a net positive? Do you find it neutral? Are you indifferent? Is it just entertainment? And why don't we have that in crypto?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that we do to an extent have it in crypto. Depending on sort of who you follow on Twitter and on YouTube, et cetera.
Right, right.
But it just hasn't sort of taken off in the same way. Um, I think, look, I think that David Portnoy, what he's doing is really kind of a sign of the times and a sign of kind of this backlash that I was alluding to earlier of like, screw you guys, Wall Street and finance and trading doesn't just have to be for this sort of elite bastion of society that all lives in Greenwich, Connecticut. It can, anyone can do this. And especially right now in this market where we're obviously seeing this tremendous bounce off the bottom that we saw in March from COVID, where, it feels like the Federal Reserve and every other major central bank in the world has turned on the taps and is, printing money. It doesn't have to be rocket science. And I think that he takes the messaging to a real extreme.
Sure.
But that said, I think that there is sort of a really important seed of truth in what he's saying. Like, this is not rocket science. And it really, everyone should feel empowered on some level to get educated first and foremost. but then get involved. And I think that, David Portnoy and his the sort of media that he's been putting out around Davy Day Trader Capital and so on. I think that it's really sort of symbolic in a way of how social media is playing into this whole trend.
Yeah.
Where Ian, you were just talking about the importance of YouTube in terms of, people going down kind of the crypto rabbit hole. We can't have this conversation without mentioning Reddit and Wall Street Bets.
For sure.
We can't have this conversation without mentioning, TikTok, which has come up already. And so I think it's just really sort of a microcosm in a way, and certainly, Davy Day Trader has gotten more traction than most, but of what's going on sort of more broadly, whether it's within financial markets or within crypto markets.
Yeah. So Ian, thanks for that, Jill. So Ian, I know you've been tracking, or you were tracking, this kind of ICO boom, a few years ago. And are you kind of, I don't know, are you a believer that there's going to be some other new version of that coming around the corner? Is it something?
New version of ICOs? Not in particular. But
Yeah.
I think really this year the new trend or possible bubble is DeFi.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
almost with our audience, they keep on asking for more DeFi, and we're not quite at the ICO peak mania yet, but I think we're slowly getting closer to that. I would say because just right now, this month reminds me of probably September or October 2017, a few months prior to December 2017 and January 2018, when that was the peak when Bitcoin almost approached $20,000. And I think we're kind of getting there with now DeFi increasing in value from over $1 billion to over $2 billion now in terms of assets locked up in pretty much just a month. So we're seeing lots of interest with just our content that has the tag DeFi in it. So
Yep.
I think DeFi is really something to kind of keep an eye on. There's lots of retail FOMO just in that space. In terms of ICOs have basically fallen out of favor.
Yep.
And until there's more regulation and clarity on that, I don't really see them coming back.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, indirectly, I mean, because obviously there was a lot of regulatory overhang with the ICO space, right? I mean, we've seen what, I guess EOS and the others basically got a good deal, right? They raised billions and gave back 24 million in fines. I'd take that deal all day, actually. Not that I would recommend anybody break the law in order to make money, but if you're ignorant, I suppose that's one way to do it. But everybody refers to this kind of DeFi as like, the next thing. But on the other hand, it's not really DeFi in the sense of there's no off switch. Every major project that's out there right now has an off switch. And I don't know what the CFTC's perspective on this is going to be, the CFTC being the regulator for commodity-based derivatives, right? But they can't be looking at this and going, oh, it's let them have their fun. I just can't see that, being their perspective. I'm wondering if either of you have a thought about this as to, they come calling and look at DAI or comp or any of these things and say, hey, look, you can call it whatever you want, but here's the off switch. You don't have a license, shut it off.
Yeah, I agree, because I think right now there's lots of interest in DeFi, but there hasn't really been much clarity in terms of the regulation around it. Because I basically tell my audience, imagine if somebody can anonymously go onto a DEX, borrow money with a flash loan without putting up any collateral, trade that on a DEX at 10x leverage, and then use that to fund terrorists. When regulators hear that, this party is over.
Yeah.
So until there's more compliance around that, I think right now we're kind of in a dream, which has possible potential, but eventually the dream will have to turn into a reality, and I think the reality will look different than the dream.
Right. And by the way,
I think it is.
Go ahead, Jill. Go ahead.
I think it is worth noting there, though, that most of the sort of well-funded or more legitimate or pervasive DeFi projects are very aware of this problem.
Right.
I know that it's something that they are extremely cognizant of and mostly trying to be proactive about. But I don't disagree. I think that that's one of the big risks to certainly investing in, but even in engaging in any of these projects.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on the applications of smart contract based derivatives for comp and other compound and other similar services, and some of the things we've worked on in the past at Abra. But we've had our own issues with regulators where we've had differences, and we've had to basically just change how we do things, because we weren't going to be in a position where we were going to just fight based on our disagreements. There comes a point where they have infinite resources and startups don't, right? And that certainly scares me. But I don't know. Time will tell. So all right. So thank you very much. I'm sorry we don't have more time. This has been super awesome. Would love to have you both on again to talk more about. I'd actually like to revisit this in a few weeks and say, okay, this is where we're at. This is what we thought was, let's and just basically say we got it right, we got it wrong. But thank you both so much for joining, and
Thank you.
we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
take care. Okay, so what do you think? Are altcoins prized for a run up? What's going on here? I don't know. Time will tell. So we've got a bunch of questions. Hector asks, along the lines of what's going on in altcoins. What do I think about ADA, which is Cardano, and am I bullish on their future? I am pretty bullish on Cardano as a project. It's got a very large developer community, which I think is fantastic. It's in general, the way I look at altcoins is that it's competition for technology, right? In other words, if we just rely on Bitcoin core developers to push the technology forward, that's not a fair burden for Bitcoin to bear. As it becomes entrenched as digital gold, the developers actually need to be more and more conservative about the changes that they make to the technology. Okay, and that means that we're going to rely on competitive technologies to propel us forward. And I think that Bitcoin could be, Cardano is an example with their proof of staking system, with their scalability system, one of those interesting technologies. So thanks for that question. Are Abra's services available to Kenyans? Absolutely. We have users in like 100 countries. So if you have access to a stablecoin or cryptocurrencies of any kind, you can deposit them into Abra. You can use third-party services like Paxful to buy Bitcoin using cash in Kenya and then deposit that Bitcoin directly into your Abra app. We have users all over the world who do things like that. So if you want to send an email to support or help at Abra, we'll gladly help you understand how to do that. So first you download Abra, then you and register for the Abra app. Then you can go to Paxful.com and you can buy Bitcoin there and then deposit that directly into Abra. And you can also exchange it for any of the altcoins we've been talking about here. Okay, so let's see. Really enjoyed Jill and Ian. Thank you. I enjoyed them as well. Very cool questions. So let's see. We've got some more. Let me just pick one. Can you give some examples of what problems DeFi is solving? So DeFi again refers to decentralized finance, and basically it's meant to be financial services that have no off switch. Right now, it's kind of the catch-all phrase to refer to kind of derivatives and other services that basically generate a return on depositing crypto somewhere, like an interest payment or a derivative contract that might have some payout. And those are interesting because in theory, if you have DeFi running on a blockchain, right, it can be global and it kind of runs outside of any central regulatory or regulated system, because it's not running inside of any one country and there's no off switch. Now, we haven't really achieved true DeFi in the context of there's no off switch, but so far, the regulators have been taking a kind of a wait and see attitude, as far as I can tell, when it comes to most DeFi applications like a Compound or DAI slash DAO. And so I think they're going to have a little bit of room to run as it relates to these services. So that's good. And let's see, what other questions do we have here? Keep them coming. How does Abra deal with tax issues? Okay, so I get this question a lot. So let's go into the Abra app. So if you're in the Abra app and you need to do tax reporting, you can basically click. So the little Abra man, the same guy on my shirt, you see him at the top of the app here. If I click on that in iOS, right, or I go to the menu in the top left on Android, if you scroll down, you see that there's an item called transaction history. I can click on email this transaction history to myself, and I can use that to do my tax filings. And of course, Abra can't prepare tax documents for you. You have to do that yourself, and you have to dig in as to what the requirements are in your home country. So for example, if you bought Bitcoin outside of Abra and deposited into Abra, right, we have no way of knowing what you paid for that cryptocurrency. So you have to basically keep track of that outside of Abra. But for anything you've done in Abra, we make it super easy to get that via this transaction history. Okay, so great question. Keep them coming. Let's see. What is your take on the possible Coinbase direct listing in the U.S. stock market? Would that be an option for Abra in the future? From Rainier. Thank you for the question. I have no idea about Abra's future IPO or acquisition plans. We focus 100% on building the best possible product we can to be the crypto bank for the future, and that's our focus today. In terms of the Coinbase direct listing, it's a rumor, although they also announced they're going to hold an investor day in August. I know Brian and Fred, the founders there. I was in a meeting with them in a kitchen before they started the company, just kind of going through what the implications of all this were. Love those guys, love the team they've built. They even have alumni that have left Coinbase and gone on and done great things. And so huge fan of them, good guys, very complex regulated business that they've chosen. Very high touch regulation, and so they've managed to take that on. It turns a lot of people off, but if you're going to hold somebody else's money, you're effectively a bank, and they kind of run the business like a bank. And so they've done a very good job of doing that. So kudos to them. And I think a stock listing or a direct listing or even an IPO would be a big boon for the crypto space. It would put a lot more force a lot more transparency into our world, a lot more public knowledge, a lot more people paying attention to cryptocurrencies. Institutional investors will be paying attention. The analysts that cover the stock of companies that are public in that space would definitely be paying attention. So very much a net positive for the crypto space in general. Okay, so let's see. Some other questions here. Another question about staking. We already talked about that. Why do you have a hold on deposits at Abra? Is this a one-time process? Okay, so let me talk about this. This is a U.S. specific question. The U.S. has a very antiquated, outdated system for initiating small dollar deposits, right? So if you're like in the UK and you have Faster Pay, or even Mexico, where they have the system called SPAY, transactions tend to settle in seconds or minutes. In the US, sometimes it takes days. Okay, we use either ACH or bank wires. The challenge with ACH in the US is that if you initiate an ACH transaction, you have the right effectively to cancel that transaction up to like 60 days. All right, even if you, let's say, buy Bitcoin, sell the Bitcoin, make a profit, you can actually tell your bank, hey, that wasn't me, reverse the transaction. Now, there's also people who manage to hack into bank accounts, get their login and password on the dark web, and steal money. And so Abra is then on the hook for that money, and it happens every single day. So if you're depositing money via bank wire or a credit card or depositing stable coins, or any kind of bank wire, there's no hold on the funds. If you are using ACH as a deposit mechanism, you can deposit the money and trade almost immediately, meaning you can buy Bitcoin or trade for altcoins. However, we don't let you withdraw the money for a certain number of days in order to eliminate this fraud risk that I was talking about before. We're constantly looking at new ways to improve that. And this is a problem in the whole crypto space because people disappear with the money, and then, of course, Abra has to bear that risk. So we give you a great user experience. You can access the funds right away. In some cases, you can't withdraw the funds. And so I apologize for that, but that's just the way the banking system works in the US. And I know that the US Federal Reserve is looking at other faster payment mechanisms to improve that. Why can't I withdraw crypto from Abra to Bittrex? So interesting question. So Abra uses Bittrex as its custodian for trading. And so normally it depends upon which type of crypto. In most cases, it should not be a problem. There are some edge cases where moving money between the your Abra wallet, which is hosted at Bittrex, and a Bittrex trading account may cause a problem. Please send an email to support@abra.com and give your phone number or user ID, and they will be able to help you with the details on that. In most cases, it should not be a problem. We have lots of users who use Abra and Bittrex. There are a few edge cases where we may need to help you, but by and large, shouldn't be a problem. How much does Abra charge when converting from stablecoins or Bitcoin to ADA or Cardano? In general, so Abra doesn't have trading fees or exchange fees. We basically provide you with an exchange rate. Just like if you go to Travelex at the airport and say, I have some extra euros, I get back to the US and I want to chain it back to dollars or vice versa, they give you an exchange rate, and Travelex makes a little bit of money on the exchange rate between dollars and euros, and Abra does the same thing. Generally, we make anywhere from our net margin is anywhere from 1 to 1.5%, depending upon how much slippage, how much volume there is. Sometimes the price moves against Abra before we even settle with the exchange after you've bought it, and we have to eat that. So there's a little bit of fee baked in to cover that slippage, and that's how Abra generates a small, reasonable profit. Okay, so let's see. We've got some more questions here. Thank you. Keep them coming. You guys always have the best questions. And we've got people coming in from all over the world, which is super cool. I know we've got people joining from Twitter and Facebook for the first time. Welcome to those of you joining our loyal YouTube audience. And so let's see. Could this, what do I think about this kind of altcoin awakening? Is it real? Is it going to happen? So, look, again, we talked about this with Jill and Ian. I am personally bullish on certain altcoins. I'm not going to go out and buy every one of 500 different altcoins. We track so many of them in Abra. We offer so many in the app. I basically go deep on the ones that are the technologies that are interesting to me. Joseph. And I may make certain bets on those cryptocurrencies. Yeah, so we'll see. Yeah, and I am bullish. That again, that's for me. Make your own investment decisions. But I do see kind of an altcoin awakening, altcoin season coming over the next several months, and we'll be, if I'm wrong, we'll come back online and talk about why I was wrong. If I'm right, we'll, celebrate. But either way, we'll talk about it very openly. So we have a special we have a very special surprise guest. Our surprise guest, I believe, is joining us from Los Angeles. And, we're going to have him on, and hopefully he's ready to go. And we're going to have him on in a moment. So you guys just let me know when we're good to go, and we'll switch over to that. In the meantime, while we're getting that ready, getting the video for our guest up and running, we will take another question or two. Let's see, other questions. Why should people even trust Bitcoin? I mean, Bitcoin is too volatile to be a store of value. It is generally not accepted for payments at merchants. What's the case for Bitcoin? Excellent question. So look, I saw a chart this morning that actually showed the price of stocks versus Bitcoin over time, and the price of stocks versus Bitcoin is actually way down. Meaning the price of Bitcoin is way up versus stocks over the last few years. So if you're just looking at it as an investment, you know, Bitcoin is clearly the better investment. All right. If you are looking at, you know, um, you know, payments, right? There are lots of alternative cryptocurrencies, Monero, Zcash, that are really good for quick P2P private payments. And that's the beauty of this altcoin technology, is that there's lots of competing technologies to do this. But Bitcoin, in my opinion, is emerging as one of the best stable stores of value. The volatility of Bitcoin over the last couple of months is way less than the volatility of stocks by every measure that I believe I can see, right? It's really incredible the narrow range that Bitcoin has traded in, while stocks have been all over the place, right, from March all the way through July. So I think that while we may see a huge run up in Bitcoin, again, my personal belief is that if you look at the stock to flow model for Bitcoin that I've talked about on the show, Bitcoin has got a huge run up and huge pent up demand that's about to cause it to explode. Again, it could go to 3,000 before it goes to 100,000. I don't have a crystal ball, but that's my belief. Okay, so I believe we have our special guest good to go. We'll give him 1 second, and then we'll get on here. Are you guys good? All right. So, Brock Pierce, good morning, my friend.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
All right. So, where to start? I think we have a lot of excited people out there looking forward to this. So, why are you running for president? Let's just get the basics out of the way.
Well, I assume I'm not alone in feeling concerned about the state of our nation right now. I look around, and over the course of my life, I've just watched this continual, call it, process of further and further polarization. You know, it feels like the left is going further left, the right is going further right, and it feels like we can't even engage in civil discourse anymore. It's this feeling of really us against them. If you're not with us, you're the enemy. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe it ends well. And so I think that we need harmonization between the left and the right. I think that we need more choices. I think we need something more than just the traditional sort of establishment choices. I feel like our nation is divided, and I think we need a message that can resonate in a way that it hopefully over time reunites us, because the thing that feels like it's lost on us, it's when one party is in power, they don't really care about what happens in the nation. They care more about tearing down that party and retaking power.
Right.
The world is changing rapidly. This is not the time to be, sitting around and fighting with each other. We're all in this together. The future is going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm just deeply, deeply concerned by the state of our nation. I think that we're facing existential threats from many different directions. And this is a time to unite and figure out how to pave a path forward together. Even though we might disagree on, a bunch of things, we have to find that middle ground. We have to find compromise.
So I think we have a lot of young people watching this, and I think people like Bernie Sanders really touched on however, for this guy who's probably twice your age, managed to resonate somehow with a lot of young people. What are the 2 or 3 things that you would do in the first year as president that would clearly, in your mind, resonate with a lot of young voters that are completely feel disenfranchised by the current system and feel that every politician is completely out of touch with them?
Well, I'd say there's a few things that stand out to me. And we'll see where things are next year. But right now, at the top of the list, I think that mental health is an issue that's not being discussed nearly enough.
Yeah.
Mental health is probably causing this nation a lot more harm than COVID-19 is. I imagine that somewhere between 50 and 70% of the population of the country today is living in some state of fear, concern about being able to pay their rent, their mortgage, put food on the table, or just general uncertainty about their futures. And that, takes its toll. That takes its toll, over time. So I think that mental health is clearly one of is something that needs to be at the forefront of the conversation. I pray that that is not as big an issue come next year, so it might not be the thing that I have to address as the number one priority. But right now, I think that's the biggest issue that we face right now. Another major issue that I think should resonate with young people is technology. Technology has changed all of our lives. It's changing all of our businesses, and it's going to only continue to do so, and more so exponentially. And I think that we need to understand that technology is a tool that can be good for us or a tool that could be bad for us. The outcome of that is going to be decided by how we use it, the decisions we make. And technology should be here as a tool to enhance our lives. I mean, conversations that I'm, constantly having, and one that people are very concerned with, certainly that those of us that live on the internet, is free speech. And, tech giants potentially moving from platforms into publishers and choosing to censor content. And so you've also got quantum computing, you've got AI, you've got things like blockchain, you've got systems like the new digital yuan, and foreign governments looking to upgrade their currency to give them greater capabilities. Anything that threatens the US dollar will ultimately threaten the well-being of all of us. Most of us take for granted the quality of life we have, and the US dollar is the underpinning of our economy and most of our well-being. And these are very real issues that are generally not discussed because I think too many people in Washington don't understand it. It's hard to have a conversation about things that you don't inherently know.
Sure.
And the youth
Now,
definitely understands technology in some ways better than we do because they grew up with it, the stuff that we have today in their hands very early on.
Yeah.
And you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just say. So I think that this whole point of not understanding technology, I think it's a really important point. I mean, if you look at Trump's win in 16, I would say he effectively, like him or not, he effectively manipulated the Electoral College because you had people in cities that were, I think, embracing the current economy, and people in a lot of other places that felt left out and had this anger building up over years from being left out. And that wasn't effectively being represented right in the polls. And so how do we get past this issue of this kind of inherent fear that some people have of being left out, which is leading to these discussions around, universal basic income or guaranteed minimum incomes? And is that the right solution, or is there a better way to deal with this pent up fear? And that's what I think it is. I think it's a lot of fear that people have.
Yeah, I think it's probably it's gotten worse from 2016. I mean, clearly
100%, yeah.
This year has been. I mean, 2020 is not the year we were all hoping for.
No.
It's certainly not that Back to the Future
Right.
sci-fi.
No.
Certainly none of those utopian visions that, may exist.
Not even close.
How do you address it? I think one of the things that we're going to do differently than any other campaign is truly attempt to engage everyone in the conversation so that everyone feels that their voice is heard, so that everyone feels like their voice counts.
Yep.
And one of the things we're going to do, and you're going to see this starting next week, is as we publish the pillars of our platform, call it our policy issues, it's not going to be me saying, hey, here's my position, take it or leave it. It's going to be a conversation with an expert saying, here's our present position and why we're starting here, but this is an invitation to everyone to get involved, and putting it into a platform like GitHub, not exactly something that's more user-friendly, so that everyone has an ability to comment, edit, revision controls, all of those sorts of tools, so that you really feel like you have a say in the crafting of this policy. I mean, I just feel like most of us think our vote doesn't count, our voice doesn't matter, no one's listening. And I think by just engaging in a different conversation in a different way, we can start to change that perspective, because the future is going to happen to you. It's going to happen with you.
Yep.
And we hope to engage Generation Z, Gen Y, the millennials, the youth in a way that we never have before. 50% of the population of the planet today is 35 years old or younger. The youth has so much power to affect the future. They just need to be aware of the power they actually have.
Yep. How do
And if the
you?
youth wakes up to that reality and chooses to get involved, the future will be what we make it right
Yep.
now.
Yep. So to that end, I mean, we've seen first, Me Too, and then now what's happening with Black Lives Matter. And how do you encourage youth to channel um, the energy behind those movements? I don't know if movements is the right word, but I'll just call it movements out of ignorance. To channel the energy behind those movements into something that represents either positive, either cultural change, or positive policy change, or something else that's positive.
Yeah, and this is how I operate my life, and it's, I think, a good lesson for everyone. It's important to identify the problem, right? To identify it and to understand it, but you don't want to spend too much time focused on the problem. You want to identify it, and then you want to focus on what are the answers, what are the solutions, how do we address these problems. You want to spend the vast majority of your energy, on the productive end of addressing things. And so I hope that BLM is a catalyst for real reform, for real change. I mean, BLM is happening because there is a real issue.
Mm-hmm.
There is real inequality in this nation. There is real injustice in this nation. And so it's good that that is coming to a head, because it's been continually swept up under a rug for far too long. And what are we going to do about it? From prison reform, should there be for-profit prisons?
Yep.
Is that a perverse incentive where capitalism starts to, the worst of capitalism starts to emerge? How we train our police. And should the police always be the first thing that are being called? When you have a fire, the firemen come. Okay, if there's a crime in process or you're at risk, you want men with guns to come, or you want people with guns to
Yep.
show up.
Yep.
If there's a mental health issue, you probably don't want a hammer that where the assumption is everything is a nail. You probably want a mental health expert or a social worker that arrives. And there's some basic things we can do. Clearly, police training is something that could certainly use an overhaul. One of the other issues we're seeing is, all of these statues. I believe that our history matters, and that consensus needs to be reached before any of these sorts of things should be removed. And in general, I believe that they should stay.
Yep.
This is Hitler's strategy to destroy a nation was to remove all their monuments. So the history is there to serve as a reminder, as a lesson of the past. But what you do is you start to honor others, put up new monuments.
Mm-hmm.
How do you start to change the narrative and add to the story? And so there's a bunch of stuff that hopefully comes out of this real reform that moves us forward. Otherwise, it was all for naught.
Yep.
Right? You have to have, hopefully this is a catalyst for real reform, real change that leads to a more equal and a more just society that will benefit all of us in the long run.
So speaking of real change, I don't know if you saw this. Rick Doblin, who runs MAPS, I'm sure you're familiar with MAPS, which is
I'm a supporter.
Yeah, and MAPS, for those who don't know, is basically a multidisciplinary something for psychedelic studies or research, which is basically the use of psychedelics for people who have mental health issues. And they're going into, he was on Tim Ferriss's show recently, where he talked about the last phase trials that are about to be undertaken by their organization cooperating with others to have these treatments be recognized by the FDA finally as viable treatments for mental health issues. I've seen this done outside the U.S., for example, with Navy SEAL patients who've suffered dramatic trauma but can't get those services in the U.S. because they're illegal. Do you have an opinion on this, and what do you think should happen with this type of kind of approach to mental health?
Yeah, I'm a supporter of MAPS and a big fan of the work that Rick Doblin has done, and any other organizations trying to find solutions to these very real problems. It's very easy to see when we have bodily problems, and our call it spirit problems are much more difficult to see, and therefore they're often left unaddressed.
Yep.
So I'm a big supporter, and I'm a data-driven person. I mean, the data is pretty conclusive to me that the efficacy, it's there, it's working. The last data I saw, I think, was showing that there was an 82% success rate after the first round of treatment in addressing issues like PTSD. And so, as someone that is a big supporter of our military in terms of those people that choose to put themselves in service,
Yep.
I'm not always a fan of the decisions that our military leadership has made, but certainly a huge supporter of any individual that is signed up to potentially put their life on the line in service to our nation. What an incredible gift that is to give us this freedom that we have. And so, but as a part of that, there's very real issues. People that have been to war come home traumatized, and that trauma, often exists for them forever.
Yep.
And we don't really do a lot of that work after the fact of how do we take, we often just put them on pharmaceutical drugs that they get hooked on for the rest of their lives or for a very long period of time that are not actually addressing the problem, right? Not really treating the problem at the root cause.
Yep.
And so I think the work that MAPS is doing and trying to actually really address the trauma so someone can heal rather than addressing the symptoms, we need more of it. I'm a huge fan. I think that, just in general, the war on drugs is a major problem.
Yep.
Back to prison reform. We have a lot of nonviolent offenders in prisons today for having sold pot.
Yep.
I don't think that's the best use of our prison system.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's not addressing the problem either. If someone has a drug addiction problem, putting them in, throwing them into prison long term is not probably the best solution for society. It's not the best solution for them. It's probably not the best solution for society, and it comes at a very substantial cost. One of the countries you can look at where the data, again, is very conclusive is Portugal. Portugal had the highest rate of intravenous heroin addiction, 20, 30 years ago of anywhere in the world, with 1% of the adult population being hooked on intravenous heroin use. The government tried everything under the sun to address this problem. They finally threw up their hands 20, 30 years ago and said, what if we just decriminalize it, stop throwing people in prison, and start trying to treat them?
Yep.
And they've done that. They've implemented it, and it solved all their problems.
Yep.
It also solves other issues related to organized crime, the cartel problems, all the loss of human life. I think I'm not saying that decriminalization is the answer, but I think that what we're doing today isn't working. And we need to reevaluate, the war on drugs and start back to, how we
100% agree.
There is a better way.
Yep.
And unlike most politicians that believe they have to have an answer to everything, I'm very quick to admit I don't know. Let me get back to you. I don't have all the answers, but I know collectively we probably do if we just engage in the right conversations, the right dialogue with the right people, and do it in as transparent and an open fashion as possible.
Yeah.
Because you never know where the answer is going to come from.
Yeah. Okay. I know that 100% of our audience is going to resonate with that answer. So let me just end on something that's probably a little bit more tangible to our audience at Abra, which is cryptocurrencies and blockchain and where it's all going. Obviously, my audience knows you through your work in the cryptocurrency and blockchain world. But there's a lot of people that watch our Money Talks that probably know you from other places. What's exciting to you about the cryptocurrency space? What got you into it in the first place, and where do you think it's going?
Well, I got into the space as a gamer. So I grew up playing games, and when the first networked games that you would think of as virtual worlds like World of Warcraft and Second Life, and this is before that, but using examples that are well known, I recognized that the digital currency or virtual currency in these games had value, even though there wasn't really much of a market for it. And so I got in that business, and I became the world's largest market maker for virtual currency in games. We built up a supply chain of 400,000 people, principally in China, that played these games professionally to mine digital currencies. We were Google's largest advertiser for a brief moment, PayPal's largest merchant for years. We were instrumental in the launching of Alipay. We rolled up all the world's sort of businesses. We did $10+ billion of, real money transactions around that space. And that's what I spent my entire 20s doing. All of, from the year basically 2000 to the year, call it 2008. That was my principal focus.
Yep.
And so it was a natural evolution for me to find my way to things like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, saying, well, if this can work in the virtual world, I wonder if it can work in the real world.
Absolutely.
The analog world or the default world. And so I've spent the last decade supporting, cryptocurrency projects, blockchain related projects, from founding many of them, investing in many more of them, advising, mentoring, and hopefully just through all of the advocacy work that I've done, inspiring people to
Yep.
build more of them, whether I had a direct hand in it or not. And I'm just in utter awe of the amazing things that you and everybody else has done in this space to move this movement forward, and bringing, I think, deep philosophical change to the world. I see it. I believe in it. Continue to support it. And clearly, with what I'm doing now, I do things in decades typically. So I'm 39. I turned 40 in November, and so I'm committing, call it the next 10 years of my life in civil service, in service to this nation and the greater good of all of humanity and the planet itself.
Yep. Look, I applaud your unbelievably difficult undertaking to have yourself put under a microscope like that. I'm sure there's parts of it that are not going to be fun, but apparently you're a smart guy. You know what you're signing up for, and I wish more people who don't necessarily come from politics, who have a more worldly view, would do what you're doing. I think it would help society, and so I applaud you for that. And I also love that you were on Money Talks and Maria Bartiromo's show in the same week. So that's pretty cool. But look, I think it would be awesome if somehow we could get you into the presidential debates. I don't know how that works. I think the last time we had independent candidates show up in a national presidential debate was probably Ross Perot, I'm guessing, which I'm guessing was like 25 years ago. And it's long overdue. And so I don't know how that works, but let's get a movement going to get you in those debates. And obviously let our community know what we can do to help you to get the word out and get into those debates and move your platform forward. So we're way over. Thank you so much for joining. I'm getting a lot of positive comments here. And so, we're excited to get the video up, but people have been watching live and we've got a lot of positive feedback. So best of luck to you in the campaign. Stay positive, because I know it's not all going to be fun. Try to get some sleep when you're on the road. It's not going to be easy, but we're pulling for you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So good to see you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yep. Always good to see you. Take care, Brock. Best of luck.
Take care. Best of luck to you too.
All right. Hey, so we are not going to have presidential candidates on Money Talks every week. I can promise you that. This was special. Brock and I, we go way back, and he has actually watched Money Talks and said, hey, maybe we should do this and come on and start to get the word out. And so that having been said, I'd be happy to have, the other candidates on our show. Something tells me they won't be knocking on our door, but you never know. Anyway, we're way over. We're going on 70 minutes for a 60-minute show. That's the way it goes. And thank you for joining. Thanks for the questions as always. If we didn't get to your question this week, you can send an email to support@abra.com. If you go to the Abra website, we have a fantastic FAQ section that basically gives you an overview of pretty much every feature on the site. So, just do a search for Abra FAQ. You might want to do that. It's probably faster, but you get a pretty fast turnaround from our awesome support team anyway. And if you want to send an email to help@abra.com, we can cover your questions next week. So we'll see you on the interwebs, but follow us on Twitter, Abra Global, Bill Barhydt on Twitter, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. If you go out, wear your mask. Call your mother. Say hi. Hope she's doing well. And be safe, everyone. Take care.